Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry. Today I'm taking my fourth trip in 4 days down to our car repair place. Well, the first two weren't to the car repair place. Yesterday was, and today is again. The first two trips were to go get parts necessary for the solar system. All those parts are ready. The only problem now is I'm not at home. What's going on here is that I have a sensor in the car that is failing. And the problem is that is a sensor that determines the engine position. If that fails completely, the car won't run. It's a pretty long drive, and if it fails, I'm stuck. I have to wait for a tow truck, and that can be hours and hours out here. In any case, I'll be talking some more today about what's going on with the solar system and why it's being done the way we're doing it. In the meantime, I'm going to get off here and tend to driving. Well, it's 5 hours later, and I'm about ready to leave the repair shop with the car. While I'm here, I'm going to pop down the street a little bit and go check out a solar components place and see if they have a couple of fuses. Hopefully, I'll be able to get the last of the things for the solar system ready to go. It's really important to take some time to look at the beauty around you. When I go down to the grocery store or go to the automotive repair place, it's an hour each way. The road itself is not very interesting, but some of the landscapes are just gorgeous. I hope you enjoy these little snippets that I managed to catch today on the way back. We had quite a few questions and comments on this morning's video, so I wanted to go ahead and try and answer some of those. First off, why aren't we putting the new components on the wall to the right-hand side of the existing components? The answer is, unfortunately, there's not enough room there by a lot. There's only about 2 feet, maybe 2.5 at the tops, between the other pieces of electrical equipment that's there and the wall. So it's not enough space to really put everything that needs to go there. The second reason is we have to decommission this system so that we can move all these components down to the studio and put the new components where the old components were. Now, why do I want to replace all of these components up here? The answer is I really don't want to, but we decided to go ahead and make an upgrade, and it's a pretty massive upgrade to our solar system. That's centered on the battery voltage. We've been using a 12-volt system for 15 years, almost 16 years here. It works well, but there's some things about the way batteries, especially lead-acid batteries, work that aren't obvious to people who don't use solar on a regular basis. The first is, if you think about lifting something up, let's suppose it's a 5-pound can of something. You pick it up from on the floor and you pick it up over your head, and that takes a certain amount of energy. And if it's just once, it's no big deal. If it's twice, it's still no big deal. If you do it 100 or 200 or 500 times in a day, it gets to be a much bigger deal. Well, that's true for batteries as well. What happens is that every time you discharge the battery, that is when you're running electric lights or a refrigerator or a toaster or anything else like that, it takes energy out of those batteries. The more energy it takes out, the less efficient the energy transfer is. If you've never been around a solar system, especially the inverters, you probably don't know that those wires that go to the inverter from the battery heats up. Well, that's loss. The higher the draw on the battery, the more loss there will be through a given piece of wire. Now go back to this example I was using of lifting a 5-pound can of food off the floor and lifting it over your head. That's not a big deal. But let's change it from a 5-pound jar of food to a 50-pound sack of potatoes. When you pick that up and you lift it up, you know that you're spending more energy. There's a lot more resistance. If I can just figure out how to move that sack of potatoes from the floor to halfway up, the amount of energy that I expend is a lot lower. Well, the same goes with batteries. The 12-volt battery requires a certain amount of energy to lift the output to 120 volts. Well, for a 12-volt battery, that's about a 10-fold increase in the voltage. That's harder. It's harder on components. It's harder all the way around. Now, if I can get my 50-pound sack of potatoes, let's say 60% of the way up off the ground, or even just 50% up, and pick it up, it's easier. I don't spend as much energy. It's not as exhausting. I can do it a lot more. The same goes for the batteries. That's why we moved from a 12-volt battery system to a 48-volt battery system. 48 volts only has to be stepped up about 2.5 times to get to 120 volts. A 12-volt battery has to be stepped up by a factor of 10. So the 48-volt system is more efficient all the way around. Now there's one problem with going to 48 volts. If I use the lead-acid batteries like we've been using for the past 15 years, I need a total of 24 batteries, and those batteries are expensive. It's about $5,000 for 6 batteries, so I'd be spending about $20,000. That's a lot of money, and it's a lot of space, and it's a whole lot of weight. Those 24 batteries would weigh somewhere around 5,000 pounds. I really don't want to be doing that if I don't have to. So what I decided to do was go with a new battery technology, lithium iron phosphate, or lithium ferrous phosphate. It's a newer battery technology. Is it a gamble? Yeah, it is. It may not last as long as everybody's thinking, but I think it's worth the trouble. One of the reasons is that I can get the same amount of power, actually a little bit more, out of just 3 of these batteries that will weigh a total of 400 pounds as I could out of my 6 batteries that were running for a 12-volt battery system. Now, the other problem comes in with the inverters. Inverters, like the Outback, run at a very specific voltage. My old inverters ran at 12 volts. They won't run at 48 volts, which means I have to buy new inverters. I have those new inverters. I have 3 inverters. That allows me to have 2 to run and 1 on hot standby. That means if something goes wrong with either of the other 2 inverters, I can switch on the 3rd inverter at a moment's notice. Now, what am I going to do with the components from the system that was up here in the utility building? Well, the answer is I'm going to move them down to Irene's studio. I have 2 inverters at 12 volts. I'm going to put that unit with the 2 inverters on the wall in place of the single inverter that she has right now. And I'll put the 3rd inverter on the shelf as a spare. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try recovering the batteries from up here at the utility building. There's some techniques I can use. I'm not going to go into them right now, but if you're interested, you can let me know. Well, I hope that explains a little bit more about what we're doing. The other thing you need to know is that right now we're having to run off a generator. And I'll explain all the details about what we're doing there and why we're doing it, and how we'll use that same generator going forward. Well, I hope this makes some sense to you. If not, leave your questions down below and I'll try to answer them. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications because we're going to be doing this for a while. In the past 4 days, I've spent, probably about 35 hours away from the homestead doing things like getting 2 cars fixed. We'll see you on the next video. Bye.